Okay, well, anything you say now is going to be recorded, so... Okay.
Make it count.
Yeah, make it count. I'm just going to check on YouTube and check that we're all going.
We're on YouTube. We're on the tube. I'll see how many L's are in your name. Oh, spell Phillips wrong. You put 3 L's. What's with the 3 L's?
Oh, they can see us apparently. I can't work out how to check whether people are actually watching. But I've just got a message saying they can see us, which is great.
Oh yeah, good stuff. Cheers, Johnny.
Oh yeah, we've got people commenting. That's great. We'll give it a couple of seconds. I'm just going to view it on YouTube, which might crash everything, just to check.
We don't get to see their faces when we talk.
I know, but I felt like a Zoom was going to be a bit intense if we did get lots of people turning up. Plus, they charge an extortionate amount of money.
We've had up to 75 on Zoom, but only half the cameras come on. You're as long as you guys laugh at my jokes, I don't mind. It's just when you make jokes and you just blank screens, it's real difficult.
Deadpan.
Yeah.
We've got apparently got 15 people watching, so we're just gonna give it another minute or so, just see if we get.
I bet they're delighted so far, aren't they?
That's already more people.
Top quality content.
Yeah. So apologies, everyone. We're just going to wait another minute because I'm sure that a few people will be late. Yeah. What are you drinking, Robbie?
Water.
Oh, water. Okay. It's just a pint glass. Put me off. I was thinking you're dry.
Teetotals. No, we got this. We can't get squash out here in Italy. We found this kind of sports company that do like squash drinks, and they do look dodgy but it's like big white containers of them. But it's really nice squash. So I got lemon squash, mate.
Oh, lovely.
We just took to importing our own, but this is beer. This is Belgian beer.
I remember when I first tried to go shopping when I moved to South Korea years ago, and I asked an American if he knew where the squash aisle was, and he was really confused because he thought I meant the fruit squash or the vegetable squash. So he was really confused why there'd be a whole aisle for one vegetable. And it turns out it's not a thing in America. They don't even have a word for it. So it's just us.
Juice, isn't it? I bet there's over here it's all just like packed full of loads of sugar. I imagine the Americans it's the same, right?
Yeah, we just had 19 and we got 18 when I talked about squash. So I think we should probably start, or people just start dropping out.
Yeah, that's probably.
Okay, well, we can see people's comments. That's showing up. So if for some reason the comments don't work, then just fire away on the WhatsApp group, which I'm also keeping an eye on. So I mean, introductions first. We've got Robbie Britton and Andrew Phillips here. And we're going to talk a little bit about ultra endurance cycling, kind of the basics, because I know a lot of people are starting out for the Wild West Country. So we thought we'd just go through it. And Robbie and Andrew are now relatively experienced, but both took kind of different routes into ultra cycling. And so starting with Andrew, I know that we go back quite a way, I think till basically I was born. And like me, your background is in touring, and you kind of transitioned into lightweight bikepacking and then into ultra endurance. Whereas Robbie, you have quite a different background. You were you still are an ultra runner. Am I right in saying you represented GB?
Yep, I'm representing Great Britain and Northern Ireland a few times.
An ultra runner of quite some pedigree as well, and now a coach and also a published author. So I just thought I'd get that plug in there for you, Robbie. So yeah, we've kind of all got different perspectives, but I want to put the focus on Robbie and Andrew because they are much better at finishing events than I am. So let's take their advice, not mine. So I mean, let's kick it off with Andrew, coming from a touring background. How did you find the adjustment to ultra endurance? Like, kind of, what were the biggest changes for you?
I think the single biggest thing is the amount of time you spend on the bike. So touring, which I've been doing for years before I started racing, often with Rob. It's all about, you know, you want to cover some distance, but you're really there to see the country. And and get a bit of the culture and have that experience. And when you're touring, maybe 10 hours is a long day on the bike. But you've got to just scrap that. Think again. When you're racing, you're talking about 20 hours on the bike, and really sort of flipping that mindset from like, okay, I got to try and spend time on the bike, to actually it should be no time off the bike. If you're in a race, you should be pedaling. If you're not pedaling, you need to have a damn good reason why. So good reasons include getting food, sleeping. That's about it. If you're not doing those things, or something else very important, you should be in the saddle with your legs turning. And if you can keep that in mind, just keep moving all the time, then you'll do all right. Because some people, I think, try going for average speed or whatever, which it's good to work on. Obviously, you work on your fitness and you try and keep your average speeds as high as possible. But actually, you take a 10-minute break, and that's a half K an hour wiped off your average speed for the next however many hours. So keeping moving is the single most important thing and the single biggest transition for me.
Cool. And Robbie, coming from ultra running, I suspect keeping moving was already something you were used to. But what was the biggest change for you?
I guess I should add in that I did DNF my first ultra cycling race. It's okay, as long as you learn.
Yeah, you did.
Biggest change for me was probably the addition of the bicycle. I come from
insight.
Yeah. But on a serious note, it does kind of. It's one of the biggest issues for me, because a lot of stuff that Rob and Andrew might take for granted, and we've probably got a mix of people here who are really experienced cyclists but new to ultra cycling, or experiencing the ultra distance world, or you bring other strengths to the table. The biggest thing for me is trying to do the bits and bobs that I would usually do on foot whilst on a bike, and taking into account that I'm never quite going to be in a position where no hands to change a jacket is a good idea. I've done it once. It wouldn't. The seconds it saved me, it wouldn't be worth risking my entire race doing it while sleep deprived on the third day. So I just stop and do that. It's kind of like just not being afraid. Yeah. So for me, it's looking at the strengths I can bring, but also not being afraid to look at the weaknesses that I also bring into the field, and focusing on them, but not to the detriment of the strengths. So yeah, the bike was the biggest thing. I actually brought in a lot of experience I thought would be handy through running and through coaching, and it turns out I was kind of half right, so it was okay.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I know there's at least 2 or 3 people who are runners as well as cyclists, and yeah, I'm sure that they will take a lot of that across. And I know that I asked Robbie for a lot of advice when it comes to pretty much everything apart from bike maintenance. So it is literally just the bike.
Look at it. It's
yeah.
It's far away.
You've learned a lot. And on that kind of the stuff I do ask you about, fueling is kind of one of the most important things. And I think something certainly I've got wrong a lot. And I know going into kind of first events is probably one of the hardest things to get right. You have a very carb-centric approach to fueling, Robbie, and now I know that Andrew has now adopted that, and now I have as well. So, do you want to try and explain that in brief, kind of what your approach to that is?
Well, I've got a fueling approach to fueling, like putting in the fuel that you need rather than the stuff you already have. So I know there's some people are very keen on the old high-fat kind of side of things, and they feel that when you're going such a long distance, you want to be using your stored body fats, which, hint there, they're stored already. We've all got them. We've got loads. We don't need to add extras in. So what you're trying to put in is carbohydrates. That's the fuel you're burning on a regular basis. The other thing to consider is it's linked to how hard you're working. You work it, the easier you work, right? And this can be linked to, if you're fitter, you can go easier. You can go faster whilst going easy. But the easier you work, the higher percentage of your energy you can draw from your own stored body fats. Even the cyclists like Chris Froome, the leanest kind of skeletal-looking, high-paid gruppetto joining cyclist like him, he's actually still got 40,000, 50,000 calories stored on his body right? You wouldn't believe it. Most of it's around his kidneys, protecting them. So you don't want to use all of it. But we've all got it all stored on us. And what we want to try and do is get enough coming in consistently that we can work at an optimum level. If you're like, and there'll be plenty of people who say, well, I've done a 10-hour ride without any food. Yeah, you can do that. That's totally fine. You can do a quicker 10-hour ride with food. That's entirely up to you. If you can't get any food at some point on your race, you will keep going, just a little bit slower probably. And the ups and downs we get, okay, yeah, that's the availability of energy. So we just want to try and, one, work at a level that allows us to kind of maintain a decent energy expenditure, but also keep the fuel coming in. So the carbohydrates are what we want to keep coming in. If we were talking about a race that was like in the back end of nowhere, real wilderness, we might then get into the point where it'd be worth discussing kind of like purposefully going for a low carb approach because you couldn't get any food for days on end. But we're not. We're talking about the Wild West country, which isn't quite as wild as the Wild West that Will Smith made famous, I think, when he inhabited America for the first time. And that kind of thing is actually, hopefully with Rob designing the course, you are going to pass a lot of places you can buy food. And we're talking about optimum performance, right, for you. Doesn't mean for anyone else, but your optimum performance is going to be fueled by carbohydrates, which you will have available. Does that give a quick... That's an overview of how we would fuel it. I can go into papers. I can discuss.
I know that you can talk for a lot longer about that, but that is a good overview. And I think it's important to look at the practical element, just in terms of what people eat when you're talking about being so carb focused. And Andrew, obviously, you rode the full Perfidious Albion last year. Do you want to give people an idea of what you were eating while you were doing that?
Yeah, Haribo. But basically, whatever you can get that's as pure sugar as possible, and normally that is Haribo or Haribo type things. I have a bag open in my back jersey pocket the whole time, and I'm just constantly grazing on it. If you can't, and you've got to sort of think about what you buy. You know, obviously don't buy individually wrapped sweets and stuff like that. You want stuff that'll easily go down, not too acidic, so it's gonna sit okay in your stomach. And for me, at meal times, I'll then mix in like a supermarket sandwich or that kind of thing, where it just gives you a break from the sugary sweets and also a bit of salt as well.
It really does depend on what you enjoy eating. So the thing I always say when I speak to someone for the first time about their nutrition is, what do you do already? Because that's always the starting point. We can come here and give you numbers, what you should eat or how you should eat it or the best way to get it. If something has a high amount of carbohydrates per 100 grams, right, which is going to be your Mentos, your Haribo, that kind of level, it is more portable. But also, it's no good it being the best fuel in the world. I'll pick up like products like these or gels or something like that, or chews or drink mixes. I'll show you more in a second. It's no good having that stuff if you don't eat it, right? So if you can only get by on supermarket sandwiches, Maureen salt loaf, and your favourite pack of Pringles, then actually that's fine, because it's better than getting none in. And the thing to think of, I was going to get in my head then. I had a good idea and it passed. And a really good way of saying it. But it's finding what works for you. And it doesn't have to be pure sugar is one thing. And again, at both ends of the pack, the harder you're working, the more carbohydrates you're burning, the more you need. Right? And that's going to have to be coming in little and often. There's an ultra runner called Yanis Kouros. He used to run records for 1,000 Ks. 1,000 miles running different. It sounds like I'm making it up, but that's what he used to do. And he would have little sweets the whole way through, little baklava and biscuits dipped in honey, right? And that's back in the 80s, and he just kept trucking along. When you're working over the course of an ultra cycling race, you might not be at that high intensity, all the time, especially if you're on the flats or the downhill. If you can eat on the downhill, I can't. Hands on the handlebars. But if you're working at lower intensity, your body's got a bit more time and a bit more kind of availability in terms of resources to digest things that are maybe a little bit more complex. And I'll often say, like, where are you at the moment? Start thinking about it. Start looking at when you do go into the next petrol station you go into. You might be there just to buy some petrol, but look around and go, what would I buy if I was in a race? it's almost like it's bringing sports psychology into it. You're visualizing that moment in a race. You're like, okay, what could I do? You'll start finding yourself looking at the numbers on top of at the back of things and just getting an idea of what might keep you fueling. But it could be a base of flapjacks with some sweets on top. It could be, this is what I was going to say earlier, it could be, and it might look to you as a reasonably unhealthy diet for the course of your race, right? What we're doing here in ultra-cycling isn't particularly healthy in the race, but the lifestyle as a whole, very healthy, brings many benefits. But what you then put into your bottle, like if I'm in the middle of nowhere, I've often mixed orange juice and Coca-Cola or Red Bull into a 1 bottle and then drunk that as I'm going along. That's disgusting. I wouldn't choose it any other time. I wouldn't advise anyone to drink it any other time, except for 3 a.m. in Switzerland when there's a vending machine and the only other option is, like, I don't know, vending machine sushi. I'm going for that, what I can get. So it's just find out, think about what you eat now on your ride and start experimenting with some different snacks that might bring. Andrew's trying to talk and I just keep going.
And it's worth. I'm going in. I'm diving in, and it's worth starting to do that now, isn't it? Because if you're used to that on your training rides, you'll find that a lot easier in the race. Not just the actual act of buying the stuff and eating it whilst you're riding, but also you can train your gut to some extent. That you are processing those carbohydrates better as you ride, and your body gets used to that.
Yeah, and I think I'd just add to that based on what you guys said about not really focusing on numbers. I know how many carbs per hour you guys can eat, and I know if I ate that, I would vomit everywhere. So it is particular, it's how much you're used to, and it's also just what you like. So I mean, if anyone else is listening and they've read a number for how much you should eat per hour, like bear in mind that the person writing that might be fine with it, but you might not be. So it is personal.
Especially from a female cyclist point of view, a lot of the research is done on male cyclists or male endurance athletes, and there's it's very male centric. So like, as a female cyclist as well, you can have different interactions with the food you're taking on board during different points of your cycle. So there's points of your cycle you might, I don't know if we've got any female cyclists on at Rob.
We have a few signed up, so I don't know, but I can't see who's watching.
I'll go on quickly. Yeah, the different points of your cycle where your body might be utilising fats a little bit more, and other times we're using carbs a bit more, and you might find that in the day-to-day life comes through in your cravings. But there's some interesting female athletes really good for that with Jess Piasecki and Georgie Brunvels. But there's information out there, but again, it's very individual. So it could be worth experimenting with food in your own training. And the last thing I'll add, and I'll stop talking, I promise, is not only does practicing it in your training help with eating it and using it in the race, it can also improve the quality of the training you're doing and reduce the impact of that subsequently in the subsequent days. If you've done a long ride fasted, not only can you do it quicker with the right fuel, watch any of the tour races now, they're fueling the whole way through, they're finishing the ride and they're having a fizzy drink to start replenishing their glycogen stores, but also you're going to feel better the days after if you've not gone on empty.
We've got a couple of questions, which actually I think it's worth addressing. First one, because it's probably a bit easier to answer. We've got, I like eating. I really like eating. Is it possible to eat too much when riding, taking away blood from much needed leg turning for digestion? I mean, that's cramp. Stitch, isn't it, basically? You get stitch.
So a stitch can generally be an overexertion of the muscles around there. So that's a slightly different thing. I would say in terms of diverting blood away from the muscles, unless you're going to be sticking an FTP effort up the next climb, which I would never advise unless you're finishing at the top of that climb, we're generally in this environment, we've got enough. We're not working at that higher intensity. If you are working at that high intensity, you haven't got enough to digest. You don't feel like you can digest what you're taking on board. I'd ease back a little bit. Again, over the course of the race, ease back a little bit. You're going to be 30 seconds slower to the top of the next hill, but you're not going to shit yourself. So these are all kind of swings and roundabouts.
So I would say anecdotally, you can eat too much. I've definitely done it, and you start getting sort of indigestion, and you feel a bit
You've had acid reflux, haven't you, as well?
Yeah, you get a bit of acid reflux. I take Rennies with me on a race, and they're really useful. Get some antacids down if your stomach needs that. Shall I also?
Hey, we've got a question about caffeine
gels. Shall I?
Yeah.
Shall I do mine on that?
Go ahead and give your opinion. Just to say the question, it's what about caffeine gels or caffeine tabs in drinks? Do you take them constantly or when your energy's low?
Personally, in energy lows, or sort of when I anticipate an energy low, I don't take that much caffeine during a race. I think I don't know. I'm never convinced how much it helps. I know all the studies show that it does, and when I have a coffee, I feel like it helps. But when I just take a caffeine tab, I don't get the same feeling I do from a proper espresso. So yeah, I do use them. But I try not to use them too much.
I think we know already that you're the odd one out here, though, because I think both Robbie and I do use them quite a bit. Is that right, Robbie?
I've tried both ends of it. Right, I've gone way overboard on the caffeine, and Andrew, I went up a climb with Andrew whilst discussing. He did also hit one of my key topics for speaking too much, which you imagine is.
Longest night of my life. Robbie and I were cycling up a climb in the Alps towards the end of the Three Peaks bike race a couple of years ago, and we'd both done 4 days riding with not that much sleep, and Robbie was off his face on caffeine tabs and was just chewing my ear off the whole climb. Fortunately, at some point we went our separate ways, and I got a bit of rest.
Yeah, I would say with caffeine, it depends what you're using it for, right? And we do again. We have different people. Different people react differently to caffeine. It's interesting. Andrew talks about feeling quite an alertness or a benefit from an espresso, but not the tablets. Or you've got the chewing gum and the drinks, or you might have it in your gels. We might also see some individual variation between how people react to different types of caffeine. If you're trying to take caffeine to give yourself that kind of boost, right? What it will do is kind of block the pain on the effort receptors, might change your perception of effort. If you don't have the energy in your body to react to that, it's not going to help too much. I feel great, I feel energized, but you're in like the third day or you're in the second day and you haven't actually put the energy in to make the most of that. It's not going to help too much. If you're using it to avoid the sleep demons, what the caffeine does, it blocks the receptors of something called adenosine in our brain, which builds up, but it doesn't deplete the adenosine. It just blocks the receptors. It will trick us for a little bit, but if you're super, super sleepy, that's going to come back as soon as the caffeine wears off. So I would advise, like Andrew said, maybe planning it in for some of the quieter times when you actually are expecting around your normal sleep cycle when you go to sleep, or if you know the sunrise is coming, and that's a huge boost in itself. But I would kind of maybe have it as something, again, as a little backup. And when you do use something like caffeine, take some energy, something with energy in it to help. And also know that you've got the next 15, 20 minutes it takes to kick in generally. You're on your own, and you kind of like you go, okay, I'm going to keep going 20 minutes, and then it's going to help. But it's not the be all, and it's not the big savior for all things. You can't just it's not like it's like whacking a plaster on a gaping wound if you just keep putting caffeine in, because eventually your body will just shut down.
So for me, a much more sustainable way of staying awake is fueling properly. And we've already covered fueling. Let's not go back into it. Don't set Robbie off again. But yeah, for me, if I eat properly and I get enough energy in, then I'll stay awake much better that way than I will with caffeine. So make your first port of call all those carbohydrates, and then have caffeine there. For me, anyway, it's personal, and then I'll have caffeine there as a sort of backup for if I need it.
It is to do with that adenosine I mentioned. So adenosine builds up quicker if metabolic demand outweighs supply. So if you're going too hard or not eating enough or some mixture of the two, it builds up in your brain, and the only way to deplete it is through sleep. So if you're getting towards the night and you struggle to eat during the night, set an alarm to eat, lower your effort a little bit, and it will help avoid the sleep demons coming on.
Justin gives us a thumbs up. That's enough about coffee.
That means we've talked enough about coffee. We've got another couple of questions I want to come back to about prep and kind of packing, but I want to address that later on. Quickly, I don't think this is a topic we need to spend a huge amount of time on, but I did say we'd address it in terms of hydration. I don't think that we're going to have too many issues in May in the UK, but I think it's fair to kind of ask the question: do you, both of you, take electrolytes when you're riding, and what do you do maybe on the road when you don't have access to electrolytes if you need them? Andrew, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think Robbie and I are a bit different on this. I have some with me, and sort of if it's particularly hot, I'll use them. Or if I start to feel that I'm getting a deficit, then I'll use them. But I don't constantly have electrolytes in my water. I like my water to taste like water, and that sort of kind of helps with all the sugar that I'm shoveling down. But I do carry some salt tablets, like sodium capsules, are really useful. That's the thing that I find myself in need of most. Yeah,
and Robbie?
I've always had a precursor. I'm sponsored by a company called Precision Hydration, so please bear that in mind when I talk about products. But I do try to mention some others as well. Again, it's very individual. It's worth, if you go on Precision Hydration's website, they have test centers around the country, the world even, where you can see what level of sodium you're sweating out per litre of your sweat. It's likely we've all got very individual levels. Mine is around the mid part, like 1,000 milligrams per litre. I've got athletes 2,000 milligrams. I've got athletes 500. I'd imagine Andrew's is quite low. It's genetic, a little bit environmental. It won't change over the course of the race. And what we try to do is match what's going in to what's coming out. So someone like myself, I try, if I'm drinking a lot, I will increase my electrolyte amount to make sure that I'm getting 1,000 milligrams in per litre of drink I'm taking on board. So Andrew, again, if Andrew's not drinking too much, he's not sweating too much, he's not going to do too much electrolytes. If you're putting loads of fluid in, especially if some people use their fluids to bring in their energy as well, with Coca-Colas or some of the sports drinks out there, it just means you're bringing a lot of fluid. If you're starting to feel those symptoms, the initial ones, fatigue, nausea, your hands swell up a little bit, you get a pooling of liquid in your stomach, wonderfully, the symptoms for too much and too little sodium are identical. So it's one of the two. Think back to how much you've drunk. If you feel like you've probably drunk a lot of liquid and too much sodium, it might be worth having, again, it doesn't have to be salt capsules. It can be a tube of Pringles, right? You just make it, listen to your cravings. You start craving salt. By the time it's pooling up in your stomach, any liquid you add in is still making that more out of balance. So if you have an electrolyte drink, unless it is literally kind of stock, you're not going to be kind of right in the balance enough because you're adding more fluid in. So I always try and make sure, again, when you're tired, just having using the capsules. I also like my drinks not to taste too salty, but I'll have them as I fill up the bottle. I'll have a couple, so I know that bottle is now okay because the litre that's coming in has been matched by the electrolytes I've taken on board.
That is a very scientific explanation. Thank you.
Just make sure if you're not sure, just lick your arm. If it's salty, have some more electrolytes. If it just tastes like water, just have a little bit less. Also, dogs are good for testing that.
They do tend to chase you on a bicycle anyway, though, so I wouldn't necessarily say that's the sole. Thanks for that. I said we'd not spend too much time on it, so I kind of want to move on to the next topic, which is about pacing, and especially pacing at the start of an event, because I think this is something that a lot of people get wrong, and they don't know necessarily what they should aim for. And I know that not everyone has a power meter, so often we're looking at heart rate or power. So, I mean, the first question is, when you're setting out at the beginning of, say, for example, an 800-kilometer event, do you have a target in mind? And how strictly do you stick to that? Or do you just go and smash it up the first climb and try and get the KOM like Andrew?
My favorite is... All right, my favorite is to watch all the people go flying up the road, and you just think to yourself, "I'm going to be seeing you again." You're not going to get far, and normally it's true. You know, sometimes they bugger off and win, but normally you'll see them again burned out before the day's out. So yeah, I would say don't go mad. My standard sort of start of the race pace is like pushing on a little bit harder than I'm going to go all race, probably, because there is a bit of a psychological benefit to being in that kind of front group. But always stay within yourself. There's no point pushing yourself to a point that you're gonna regret later on.
Oh, have we lost him?
I'll just have to do more talking, mate.
That's fine. He's come back. Are you there?
Hello. Yeah. I'm pretty much done with that. But yeah, sort of. I'll be pushing on a little bit, but always trying to stay within myself.
Do you look at your heart rate and power at the beginning of an event?
I look at my heart rate, not my power. So I'll say, I'm not going to let myself go above, 160 or whatever I decide. And obviously that depends on what the terrain is like at the start of the race and how long the race is and all that kind of stuff and your individual heart rates.
And Robbie, do you have a similar approach?
I would advise people, very individual, right? I've seen a lot of people that have done more cycling, racing, like themselves, shorter distances. They do tend to smash quite hard because over the course of a one-day race, like you'll smash hard up the climb, recover, smash hard, recover, and I'm always impressed at how that works in a one-day cycling race. Watching people. The two things I would say, if it doesn't feel easy up that first climb, it should feel easy. Shouldn't feel like you're really labouring. If you're labouring up the first climb, you're probably working a bit too hard. If you don't feel like you could have a sandwich or you could eat something on that first, I don't know what, again, I'm thinking about races where the first climb's 40 minutes or something. But even in that first 2 or 3 hours, if you're working too hard that you can't eat, you can't drink, or it feels like hard work, just ease it back a bit. I mean, you're talking about being 5 minutes slower over 10 minutes slower over 8 hours, right? But if it's not sustainable for the entirety, it's not about going fast in ultra cycling. It's about not slowing down and being able to stay on the bike. So if you can go a K an hour slower, but stay on the bike for another hour, that's the way to look at it. So that I think it's just thinking, think about your own experience in your own kind of previous kind of racing and stuff, and think, what's going to make me get off this bike? What's going to stop me eating? What's going to make me kind of slow down? If you're a K an hour slower, it can be a real easy bike ride, right? But then you stay on the bike for 1 extra hour, and it's even at 20K an hour. It's 20 more hours. 20 hours of going a K an hour faster, or 1 more hour. Just doodling along. That's how I would think about it. And I think we do get caught up at the start, bombing it along and thinking like we have to bank. And the one thing, the sleep deprivation will slow you down. So just taking into account how much you're going to go into the areas of sleep deprivation, because that provides an additional. What it does, it impacts our perception of effort. So we are able to go hard, but it's really, really hard. So if you're going to get really sleep deprived, that's when you start thinking about going a bit harder at the start, because you're going to be kippered anyway on the second day. If you're planning to get some sleep in, and a decent sleep, 3 hours plus, then actually you can probably get away with going a bit easier. So it depends on your race strategy as well.
Yeah, I actually do vividly remember going up the first climb in 2VS with you talking at me incessantly at 5 o'clock in the morning, and me realizing I didn't have enough breath to talk back, and that was the point at which I dropped back. I still set a personal best 20-minute power, so I was clearly going far too hard, but that was after you dropped me.
What were you doing? I mean, I did tell you to slow down.
It was only for that 3-month period or something. It wasn't for the whole time, but still far too hard. So this is why you shouldn't follow any of my advice, basically. Right. Next on that. We had sleep, but let's come back to that, because we've got we've kind of covered that a bit, and I feel like we've got a lot of questions about prep and kit and what to take. First of all, we had a question about sort of how much prep do you do for yourself before the event, and do you recce resupply points, places to sleep, or do you just go with the flow? Andrew, what's your approach on this?
The more work you can do beforehand, the better. It's going to make your race easier. Obviously, we're all we're all busy people, and there's only so much you can do, only so much you can fit in. But yeah, absolutely give it as much time as you can. I'll generally pick sort of sweet spot areas. I know I can do X how many 100K in a day, and I'll say, okay, that means that I'm likely to be in this kind of area at this time. So I need to know where a shop is before it closes, at roughly 300K in, and then I need to know what my sleep options are like after 550K or whatever it is, after how many hours. And then I'll look around that instead of doing the whole course, which is a bit, it just takes a lot of time. And also you end up with information that's hard to access during the race. So there's no point knowing where every single lamppost is along the way, because you can't hold that in your head and you can't easily check it when you're riding. So knowing where important things are at important times, and then obviously having the ability to adapt and be versatile is really important too, because you might have the best plan in the world and then it might go to shit when you change ups into your spokes and bust your wheel or whatever. So do as much work as you can beforehand, but kind of try and work smart is my thought.
What if, Andrew, there's loads of lampposts, so you can take less batteries for your head torch?
Yeah, don't take Robbie's advice on riding at night, because I think we discussed this, and you ride with like a 30 lumen front light, which is just insane.
Robbie rides with a tea light in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what you said about prep, I know that I probably massively overplan, and sometimes you can just spend ages planning. But one thing I have used is to use like the Ride with GPS map feature. You can do a custom map. We're not sponsored by Ride with GPS. I'm just saying you can drop like POIs along the way, and I find that really useful because you can access it as you're kind of on the move. I don't know, Robbie, if you, places of interest, like the little waypoints. I don't know if Robbie, you do anything like that.
I go Google Street View. I love that. Just kind of go on. I use Komoot, but I've dabbled on the Ride with GPS, whichever. And it's a contentious topic. But I love dropping the little Street View man in and seeing little bits of it. If you've got the time, plan as much so you can make race day easy, but know that it's all going to go to shit at some point, and you've got to be able to adapt. So don't do that instead of going out on your bike. Would be my if you got I need to do so many hours of planning, just get out on the bike and learn through experience what happens, and get into shops and practice going through that. And if you can find a bit of information out, great. And you can't plan everything, and the ability to adapt, which you learn from going out and having stuff go slightly wrong, will hold you in great stead. Is that it's worth having the ability to adapt. I've got very little awareness of how far I'll go in one day. I don't do much with the paces. It's all effort-based. So I just kind of know roughly where I might stop, and I'll just Google Street View the bus stops.
I mean, that kind of brings us to another discussion. And there is a question about packing, but I kind of want to touch on that first, which is the bivvying versus hotels perspective, because I know that that's something that comes up a lot in terms of discussion, and it varies on kind of the length of an event. What's kind of the determining factor for you, Andrew, if you're going to sleep in a hotel or bivvy it? What's your kind of take on that?
So I've ditched the bivvy bag now, and I go super light. I'll have a down jacket if I think it's going to get cold, and I basically have two sleep modes. One is hotel proper sleep, and two is 5 minutes sleep by the road in my down jacket. And I kind of, for reasons of weight and also quality of sleep and stuff like that, I've decided that for me, the middle ground doesn't quite work. But that's not true of everyone. And I do that because I want to go as fast as possible. And if you're looking for resilience, a bivvy bag is brilliant. If you're not sure if this is your first race, whatever it is, then taking a bivvy bag might well be the right approach for you. I took a bivvy bag on my first race, and if you've got it there, you've got to sort of, if you've got a bivvy bag and something warm like a down jacket, you've got a bit of a get out of jail free card, because you know that however bad it gets, you can lie down, get half an hour's sleep, and you're not going to die. So for me, I now have these two extremes, but for lots of you, a bivy bag is probably a really good option.
Especially, I would say, with the cost of hotels in the southwest currently. Unfortunately,
it sounded like a demigod then, Andrew. For you mere mortals, for me, VVS winner, I pick and choose. I actually did a really nice chatting to Andrew about it once, and I was, because you've done some more hotel sleeping than I like bus stops. That's just general life rather than bikepacking. But you said, actually, I got a good night's sleep because I wanted to enjoy the race. And I think there is definitely, when it comes to sleep deprivation and where you sleep and how you plan your race strategy, it's not as fun doing it on little sleep. So if you have got the ability to do it a bit more sleep, it depends what you want to get out of it. I would highly recommend cycling through at least some of the night because it feels real special. It feels like you've earned something that other people don't get. This is yours because you've earned it, because you've cycled for a day and you're going through the night and cycling at 3 in the morning when there's no one around, and it just feels special because you've earned it. But equally, the next morning feels slightly less special when you're just kind of like cycling on, you're not doing it. It makes the psychological side of it harder. It makes the eating, every bit becomes hard if you sleep deprived. So I've carried a bivy bag on races and I've never used it in a race. From a safety point of view, if you're somewhere a bit wilder, you're on a higher plateau, or the weather's bad, it's an extra level of safety that can be really useful. I'm sleeping out. I've slept in all my clothes, down jacket, waterproof trousers. I like taking waterproof shorts instead of trousers because I can wear them at night as well. And finding like a little nook and cranny to sleep in. I slept in the front of a light shop. It was good because all the lights were still on to advertise how good they were, and they produced heat. So I dried out. But again, it depends on the race, depends where you are, depends how comfortable you are in those situations. Because if you're sleeping somewhere that you're not actually comfortable being, you don't get a very good night's sleep. So if you're an experienced bivier and you're happy in someone's like porch, then yeah, crack on. It just see what you've done before, kind of think about if you're actually going to use it. I do like it. Again, I always look for the other thing with the hotel side of things. You can get food there, you can charge stuff. So if you're running off kind of using battery power, added benefit. But you've got your check-in time, you've got your check-out time. Make sure you can get your bike out when you want to leave. If you're only kind of, depends how far you are from the finish. Depends how miserable you want to be. I'm in this for the misery. So that's why it's a bit, I want to see how dark it can get and me keep pedaling the cycle. So it's not maybe the best person to ask on strategies, but it's definitely think about, have a little bit of a plan, but I would highly recommend experiencing a little bit of misery because it's nice to overcome it.
I think that sort of answers another question we had, which wasn't about misery. It was about predetermining when you sleep, or kind of just falling asleep when you fall off the bike. I don't think realistically most people do the latter approach. I think most people sleep before they're quite that broken. But what about convenience? How does the convenience of opening times of hotels and shops and stuff affect sleep strategy? I know that's shaped your race before, Andrew, with you've taken quite a different approach to stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I like to, if I'm staying in hotels, I like to sleep early, get up early, because if you arrive at somewhere at 9 o'clock, that's too early to normally sleep. But if you've had hardly any sleep the night before, it's absolutely fine for you. That way, the reception's open. You can check in no time, get your head down, and then you can get up again at midnight. It might even be before midnight, and the hotel owner will think you're weird, but they might not even see you, and you don't need them. Just make sure you've already paid, and you can just get out of there and don't leave anything locked in your room, as someone did on Perfidious Albion last year and had to break back into the hotel. But yeah, so I would say for me, if I'm staying at a hotel, sleep early, get up early works well as a tactic.
And I think you both also nap during the day if you're finding that sleep's a real issue and that you it pays itself back in terms of time. Would you say?
I would say, yeah, don't underestimate the power of napping. I didn't used to know how well it worked, and then you start doing it when you're really, really tired. just lie your bike on the verge, lie down next to it, and close your eyes for 5 minutes. And even if you don't get proper sleep, you can get a bit of rest and you can clear some of that adenosine that Robbie was talking about earlier. And you will wake up better and your legs will turn quicker. It'll be worth it.
Also, from a safety point of view, it's like if you're that sleepy on the bike, you're putting yourself at a greater risk. So just do take that into account. It might just be that it's a 30-minute stop to have a cup of coffee, sit down, and just you might nod off on the table. That might be enough to get you along to the next bit. But if you're getting that, if you're finding yourself struggling to get out of that cycle, I would definitely look at a more substantial sleep, even like one sleep cycle of 90 minutes somewhere. That if it's a warm bench in the afternoon, it's going to make you a much safer cyclist on the roads. Yeah,
definitely. So on that note, sorry, we've kind of gone over on time, and I think mainly because I asked Robbie about fueling early on. And I know, Andrew, you're actually at someone's house and you're kind of meant to be, I don't know, entertaining them or them entertaining you. So we should probably let you go. But I want to just stay on with Robbie to answer some questions on kit because people have asked that. But I want to say thanks very much. And I think everyone who's at the Wild West Country will hopefully see you in May because you're going to be helping out.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Sorry, I've got to dash. Really interesting discussion, but yeah, I've got to go show my face at dinner and try and be entertaining. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your chat. See you later, guys.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
He looked like he had those big earring plugs, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't know what that was. Sorry, we've got questions on kit, Robbie. So I was gonna just quickly address those. And if anyone else has got any more questions at this point, we're kind of getting towards the end of what I'd written out. So if you've got anything else, just fire it away now. But we had someone asked what to bring in terms of just the basics. They said, I'm literally thinking of taking a change of cycling kit and a saddle bag plus a frame bag for food, plugs, charging, phone, and cycle computer. Is that along the right lines? I mean, that does actually sound fairly good to me, Robbie, but I don't know where do you start in terms of what you're packing? What do you think of?
So I came in as a complete beginner, and I found it really useful. I think it's the Apogura website. I've got some really good articles and things that people have packed before, and looking at all different levels, because it's all well and good seeing what Ulrich or Fiona pack, and you can pluck things from that. But like it's the kind of thing that it's worth practicing. Go out for a night ride, see what you're missing. I love my leg warmers, my arm warmers, decent waterproof. I pack waterproof shorts. So I've just basically cut waterproof trousers in half. Give a good wind block as well. But it's so individual. You've got to go out and almost make those mistakes and learn what you should have taken. And it's best to do that before race day than to be like halfway around looking for a bike shop to get yourself a different pair of gloves or something. But it's also an option. If you are in a bike race, you can use commercially available services.
That's
if you're
very true.
Finding yourself, what did I use on the top of a pass in Switzerland? It was like absolutely freezing, 2,000 meters in the clag, and I found the sanitary product disposal bags that were in the toilets, and I used them as shoes. I put them inside over my socks, made my feet loads warmer, like little kind of plastic, kind of the gloves that we've been using. I don't know what people like to use. I put them on.
That's hilarious. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the first thing on your packing list, though.
No, I would question. Remember, it can be adaptable. You can be like the old school kind of newspaper down the front might be, or like a bin bag you found and put it down your shorts. Those are the things that you like. So I would pack and I'd go and experiment. And yeah, what do I pack? I pack a lot of food. I have a rule that if I don't know how to use a tool to fix my bike, I no longer pack it. I don't know if that's wise or not, because maybe someone else could help me use it. But I don't pack a spoke key because I don't actually know what to do with it.
You won't need one.
There you go. I don't. It depends on what's going to be a catastrophic ending to your race and what's going to finish. I think you see people carrying like a full toolbox, and really, most of the things you're not going to use, and the things if you do need them, you're probably in a bit of bother anyway. So I take a practical advice, a level to it. And the other thing I think was chatting to Rob beforehand. Think about how long the race is going to take you in terms of time. So when Andrew and I talk about like look at different races, it might be the same distance you're doing, but he might be doing it in 36 hours, and I might be doing it in 86 hours. It's the same distance, but it's a totally different experience. It changes your fueling, your sleeping, but also what kit you need. Like, how long are you going to be out in terms of days? What can you? Yeah, are you going to stop in hotels? So can you wash your shorts? Is it going to be hot? So can you soak the stuff and dry it off on a descent? Or actually, you're going to need to, like, you're not going to have the opportunity to wash your kit over the course of the race. Are you going to a hotel where you can dry and out, or do you need a spare baselet because you won't be able to dry stuff during the day? So I'd love there to be a kind of an all-seeing, all-knowing kit list, but very individual and very well, yeah. There's loads of little tips. Chat to your fellow cyclists as well. Get them in a group, innit, Rob? And they can all discuss what they've got. And
yeah, I mean, we've got the Facebook group and we've got the WhatsApp group, so feel free to ask questions there. I mean, I'd add to that I think most people probably take too much on their first event, but that is definitely the right way to go. I think going too little is more catastrophic. I have found that out. And like Robbie, I now take more waterproofs because I found out the hard way that what happens if you're cycling in the Pennines, that, you know, single-digit figures and you have too little. So I would definitely say, you know, if you're gonna get it wrong, it's better to get it wrong in that direction. In terms of just take a change of kit, I know Andrew, if he was here, would say he always takes a spare pair of cycling shorts for longer events. So if you're thinking that it's going to be more than a couple of days, or I think if he goes over 4 days, he always takes a spare pair of shorts because he finds the comfort massively outweighs the kind of the inconvenience of having an extra pair of shorts. I don't take any. I don't know about you, Robbie.
I don't wash it. My friend who's a proper cyclist was telling me he was shocked that I didn't wash my kit every time I wore it. I'd go like a week and then change the shorts. If you sweat a lot, you get salt crystals in there, which can increase the chafing. The other thing I was going to say was pack for the worst conditions and your worst state, tired, hungry, grumpy, rather than packing for cruising down in like 20 degrees, feeling brilliant. That's like, you could do that in a mankini. Pack for the times you're going to feel like rubbish, and that's when that's kind of like.
That's definitely a really good point, actually, in terms of how you'll feel. I know that I can cycle the first day of an event in bad conditions, and I can wear like half my layers. But by the second and the third day, I'm wearing all my layers in much better conditions because you're just struggling to generate that body heat because you're naturally working at a lower intensity, and your heart rate's lower and everything else. So I found out the hard way that you need to pack way more than you're going to think you'd need for the second and third days and beyond that.
If there's other bits of kit as well that you can get multiple uses out of. So again, if you ask like if there's a jacket you're going to wear off, like, okay, your clothes for the evening, but also it's an emergency like extra layer, or it's just little bits like that. Like if you can get multiple uses out of a bit of kit, it's worth having. Like if you're going to be packing an extra pair of shorts to wear in the evening, but actually there's not that much difference between that and a lightweight extra pair of bib shorts, then double it up, right? You can wander around in your spare cycling like what you're going to get. I think, yeah, just kind of think if you can use an item more than once, then it's adding to its value.
And I think on that, someone said, would you always take a down jacket? I would say I've not taken a down jacket till recently, until I've started sleeping in it, because of that dual use and the fact that actually riding in a down jacket is quite difficult, especially if you're in the UK, it's usually raining, and having a down jacket and a waterproof is actually usually it's quite hard to do, and it gets wet and it doesn't insulate. So the answer to that question is no, I wouldn't always take a down jacket. If there's a better option, like a thicker kind of mid layer or something like that will stay drier. And I don't know about you, Robbie, do you always ride with a down jacket?
I vary. It depends on the conditions I'm cycling in. So as you say, like if you're using a down jacket, it gets wet, it loses insulating abilities. A synthetic jacket won't, but it's harder to pack down. So it depends on like how much you can pack down. I've got a last one. I got this Polartec gilet. It was actually warm, but not quite down jacket warm. But I had that for sleeping in with a waterproof on top, rather than taking the down jacket. But yeah, down packs down and provides the overnighting. But if it's slightly bigger and you can use it in the rain underneath a waterproof because it's synthetic, then that definitely is worth considering. It goes back to that kind of dual use. Can you use it in the rain and the cold nights? If you can't use it when it's cold and rainy, then it loses some of that value.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And the other question we've had further up, I think in terms of charging, and I know someone asked this beforehand, was do we go with USB or dynamo? There's always that kind of disagreement. Although I think both are great options. But what have you always gone for, Robbie? I don't know what your setup is, apart from your pathetic front light. So I'm guessing not dynamo, actually.
I have used the dynamos first. First time I did 2VS, I had a dynamo. And I found I was going so slow up the final climb up Etna. it kept just turning off. I was still pedaling, but I was falling asleep. It depends on. Sometimes the terrain comes into there. Like, are you going to be going fast enough to generate the electricity you need, or the power you need? I've definitely decharged my phone, trying to not understanding it. So understand it. I've had wiring issues with mine, so I actually do use power banks. But yeah, like, it's more from like, I understand it more. I know I can troubleshoot it more. And if there's a problem, I can charge it somewhere. Whereas the dynamo is another thing that I've had issues with in the past. I haven't gone faster with enough to use in the past. So it's just keeping things in that in mind. Yeah, I probably, unless I was going 5 or 6 days worth, even then, I'll use the power banks, because you're going to be in a hotel maybe every other night, and you can fully charge everything. I've got quite a decent sized power bank, and I carry one decent sized one and a couple of small spares, just in case one breaks. So there are a couple of options. And in terms of lights, I do take bigger lights. I'm just not very good at positioning them on the bike. Sometimes I've got like a 1200 lumen light, and I take, instead of taking one, like a spare battery to charge the light, I take a spare light. And then if my light breaks, I've got a spare light. Whereas I've got one light that's really good and a spare battery for it. If that light actually breaks, so the bulb goes, or when it just malfunctions, my battery pack's not going to do anything. Whereas actually, for the same weight, you can carry an additional light, and you can use both of them if you really get near the end and want to start going wild.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion as well. Taking spares of stuff like that that's really critical to you finishing is definitely important. I would say that, so I've not had the same issues with the dynamo. The main reason I switched away was just because I couldn't charge things like my phone off the dynamo effectively, and power banks have become a lot better recently. I think I'd say though, if you're going to go for a power bank only approach, you need to be a bit more scientific in working out exactly how much power you're going to use, how many hours of night cycling that gives you, factoring in low lighting conditions if you've got like heavy cloud either side of sunset, sunrise, just giving yourself a bit of leeway. It sometimes is a bit dull, but it's worth the prep. You go into the night and okay, I've definitely got 18 hours of light, and the night is only 10 hours long. I'm all good. So that's definitely worth doing.
People often confuses me as well. People carry a power bank to back up for the dynamo. So I figure, like, I'm carrying that anyway.
Well, like, that's what I found myself doing, which was like, well, I could carry one power bank and have a dynamo, or just carry 3 power banks for the start, and I just went with 3. It kind of makes more sense to me. Yeah, I certainly don't think that is something, certainly for the length of Wild West country, if you can't afford a dynamo build, it's not going to hinder you at all. I think a power bank is just as good, as long as you take the right number. Yeah. On that note, I think we're kind of getting towards the end of this. Thanks, Robbie, for your time. If anyone had any final questions, then fire away now. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I can see that most people have actually stayed watching us talk for nearly an hour, which is, I mean, a testament to your endurance. So you're clearly going to do very well.
Rob, you've got one here on this list we haven't covered, but we can get you to answer it, right? Because you've been through some tough moments. Any tricks for coping with those tough moments? What do you do?
Yeah. Sorry, we missed that.
Good one for you to answer.
How do you cope with the tough moments? Yeah, I've had some rough ones over the last year, certainly. I think there's the key thing is always people say don't scratch at night, and I have done it, and it's don't. I always take the approach that it's going to get better, and I know the last time I scratched, it didn't get better for a full 48 hours. So that was when I gave up on it. It wasn't night, but it was 48 hours of suffering. So I would say when you will hit a point, and everyone will get it. It doesn't matter how tough you are, you will get to a point where you just feel like you don't want to keep going. So I would just try and keep moving, try and focus on the next objective, and God, don't look at the final distance left. Never ever look at how many kilometers you've got left in total at any point until you can see the finish line. Do not look at that number, because it will be depressing. So yeah, that's kind of my take. I don't think that's very useful, but just forward movement, always forward progress is what I focus on.
We've all got techniques we use in life that will come in handy in ultra cycling for getting through, breaking it down into manageable chunks. I just say, if you are finding it tough mentally, trying to make sure you're on top of the physical factors that could be leading to that. Your pacing, ease off a bit, fueling. If you need extra sleep, and yeah, get through each kind of section at like one bit at a time. And it does always get better eventually, but sometimes that is getting to the finish 3 days later. It shouldn't be. If it is that, you should do some more eating, sleeping, and just try smiling. It does help tricks the mind into thinking it's better.
Or tell the organizer to make the event easier. Go with that.
Nah, doesn't help. I quite enjoy telling Juliana that I'm enjoying how much it's easier this year during the 2 years time. Is it easier this year? Are you going soft?
Please don't do that. Because I'm signed up for this year. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks, Robbie, for your invaluable advice. If anyone wants to be coached for any ultra running, then Robbie would love to coach you. But in the meantime, buy his book. But yeah, thanks everyone, and I look forward to seeing you all at the start line of either Wild West Country or the Perfidious Albion. So goodbye. We're going to end it.